Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
John Calipari is leaving Lexington for Fayetteville, shaking up the landscape of one of the best college basketball conference in a slew of ways. Also, the Mavericks have found the right equation to support Luka, and the level of desperation of the Jacksonville Jaguars has never been higher. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to get started. I'm Peter Bukowski, starting your day with the can't miss stories and biggest debates in sports. You're Locked On Sports Today.
Searching all major sports. Found.
Let's start with the biggest story.
You may have missed it while the NCAA was busy crowning two national champions, one on the women's side, one on the men's side. But John Calipari left Kentucky for Arkansas. Not exactly the move that you would have pictured even 5 years ago with Coach Cal. Chris Gordy from Locked On SEC joins us now because Cal's keeping it in the family, keeping it in the SEC, where, of course, it just means more, Chris. That's what I've always said about the SEC. Let's start with the Kentucky part of this. How much pressure do you think would have been on Coach Cal in a circumstance where they're just like, hey, what's going on? Why no Final Fours in a long time?
Yeah, well, not even Final Fours, no tournament wins, right? I mean, right. He had recent tournament losses to, what was it? Oakland and who was the St. Peter's, like schools you never even heard of. I mean, and this is big bad Kentucky. Like, this is blue blood of blue blood. You're supposed to, Sweet 16 losses are disappointing to those schools, right? Not first round tournament losses. So there's no doubt it had kind of started to, it run its course there at Kentucky, and they had been starting to think of making a change. But ultimately they had given him a lifetime contract a couple years ago that basically said, when you decide to retire, you'll transition over into our, administration side and be a big fundraiser guy and all this kind of stuff. And he would get $1 million a year for the rest of his life for doing that. And so, then they looked at it and said, well, we have to pay him a $33 million buyout to get rid of him this year. We just can't do that. So they decided a few weeks ago, Mitch Barnhart, their AD, okay, we're going to run it back with Cal, and hey, let's make this thing happen. And I think Cal started to look at the writing on the wall going, I'm probably not going to be able to turn this thing around and go deep next year. A year from now, we'll just be having another discussion about they're going to be parting ways with me. So Tyson chicken money is very real, and it helps to have friends in high places. And that's what Cal has at Arkansas, one of the biggest money boosters, the Tyson chicken family, and they decide to write a check for him.
When that chicken money comes calling, it's hard to resist. If they want to call me, I'll answer. The question, though, Chris, is going to be at Arkansas, you don't have the same sort of cachet. We know Coach Cal can recruit, but you don't have the same sort of cachet. He'll probably still get some guys, but that's not the problem. He was getting the best recruits at Kentucky, and they still weren't winning. So make the case for me from a Razorbacks perspective of like, hey, he can come here and win because.
Well, the funny thing is, I saw there was an Arkansas fan talking trash to a Kentucky fan saying, trying to do the whole, we got your coach, man. And their trash talk was, basically, well, look at what Arkansas has done the last few years. I mean, we've been all these Elite Eights and Sweet 16s. What's Kentucky done? And they're like, yeah, that's your coach now, dude. Like, what are you talking about? So, like, it's a weird kind of dynamic of like, you're talking trash about the guy you just got. So I think what the hope is, and this is what a lot of optimistic Arkansas fans think right now, is he is going to come in rejuvenated. I think Matt Jones of Kentucky Sports Radio compared it. So it's like an ex-wife, or like you break up with the wife, and now, she's going to the parlor and getting her hair done up and wearing new outfits and feeling sexy and hot. And it's like, that's what Cal is now at Arkansas. It's like, hey, I got a fresh lease on life here. I'm renewed. I'm 65 years old, but hey, let's get back to what we did back a decade ago when we were getting Anthony Davis and we were winning a national championship. And so that's what the hope is.
Yeah, the middle-aged divorcee, Corvette, gold chain, going to hang out like that. He's got the money to do that in real life if he wanted to. The Kentucky part of this we have to touch on. It seems to me they need someone who can coach basketball. Someone you're going to be able to get the players at Kentucky. People are going to want to go play for the Wildcats. What is the right basketball fit for them?
Well, it's interesting, some of the names we've heard. I mean, Jay Wright, we heard, his name was pretty quickly taken off. He's like, look, I retired for a reason. He could have stayed at Villanova for forever and keep winning championships there. Dan Hurley was obviously high on their list. Again, UConn, people say, oh, he's only making $4 million at UConn. UConn's going to step up to the plate, give him a raise. You have to. He just won back-to-back championships. And his whole thing was his wife. She doesn't want to move again. You get it. Even double the salary if wife's not happy, you're not happy. So I think Dan Hurley's staying put. Nate Oates has the $18 million buyout with the new deal at Alabama. He just took Alabama their first Final Four ever, so obviously he's not moving. And so you start to get down the list. Bruce Pearl, I think, would be funny to poach him from Auburn, and I think he's a really good coach. But the one that just makes a lot of sense is Scott Drew at Baylor. He's a guy who won a championship a couple years at Baylor, private university, but there's a peak there at Baylor. And look, he lives a quiet life there and can do whatever he wants. I think when the blue blood like Kentucky calls, you got to take that phone call, and it's attractive, man, to go get they're going to give you all the resources in the world, and ego is a big part of these coaches. And so I think Scott Drew is kind of looking at it and going, you know what? I've achieved the highest achievement at Baylor. What if I went to Kentucky? What could we do there? Could I win a championship there? So I think Scott Drew makes a lot of sense, and we're going to see. There's some other names being thrown into the mix that that could happen. Mark Pope at BYU because of his ties to Kentucky. Billy Donovan's name was thrown out there, but that kind of feels like one of those things. He's been in the NBA for a decade. Like, a lot of things have happened in the college game since then, like NIL and transfer portal. Who knows if Billy Donovan can even win at college anymore? So I think he's out. I do think this, very, very much is the favorite right now is Scott Drew. And if I had to make a money guess, I would say he's probably going to be the guy.
Stay up to date all year on the SEC by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On SEC on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Thanks for making Locked On Sports Today your first listen. Coming up, the Mavs have figured out how to make this work around Luka. Before we get to that, Giannis Antetokounmpo could miss playoff games. It's playoff time in the NBA and NHL. Baseball's in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Looking ahead, the Eastern Conference has a clear favorite. FanDuel has the Celtics minus 175 to win the East. The Bucks are next, plus 550. Though that will change drastically if Giannis cannot go in the playoffs. Think those odds are building in some uncertainty with Giannis for sure. The 76ers are the only other Eastern Conference team with odds better than 10-1 to win the conference. They're at plus 850, and they might be in the play-in. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all the shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Toronto Raptors forward Jontay Porter is facing a permanent ban from basketball. NBA Commissioner Adam Silver confirmed that on Wednesday afternoon, Porter's activities gambling on games is a cardinal sin, saying that's the level of authority I have here because there's nothing more serious, I think, around this league when it comes to gambling, betting on our games. Silver said that he wishes there was a federal framework governing sports better rather than the patchwork state-by-state approach that exists, and that the NBA prefers it be out in the open like this so that if irregularities do come up, they are more easily discovered. Milwaukee Bucks star Giannis Antetokounmpo will miss the remaining 3 games of the regular season. The team announced on Wednesday an MRI confirmed a calf strain of that left soleus, which is a muscle and part of the calf structure. That's good news for Giannis because it means the Achilles is intact. The Bucks issued an update on Antetokounmpo's status before their home game against the Orlando Magic that didn't make any predictions on his potential availability for the start of the playoffs. The release just said he would receive daily treatment and evaluation. The Bucks beat the Magic without Giannis 117-99. 99. On the hardwood, the Nuggets and T-Wolves met for the lead in the West.
Take a deep breath here. All right, buddy. So much on the line heading into this one. Obviously, number one seed up for grabs. All the talking points, all the storylines you can imagine. And you know, for about 3 quarters, I thought it lived up to the billing, to be honest. I mean, for 3 quarters, this was a back and forth, backyard street brawl with that playoff type of feel to it. Both teams really trading blow for blow. I mean, for a while, it felt like a UFC pay-per-view event there. In the end, Wolves do come up short, 116-107.
And on the diamond, the Orioles' top prospect Jackson Holliday made his debut.
The number one prospect in baseball, called up by the O's Wednesday morning, makes his major league debut in this game. Didn't get his first hit yet, but did get his first RBI. Final score from Fenway Park on Wednesday night: Orioles 7 and the Boston Red Sox 5, as the O's get to 7-4 now on the season, 11 games in, and have clinched the series. They have taken the first 2 from the Sox and will go for the sweep here later on Thursday night.
Somewhere along the way, the Dallas Mavericks went from, hey, it's a nice story, Luka Doncic, really good player, I don't know if you've heard of him, potential MVP candidate, to, wait, can this team compete for real in the Western Conference? A 111-92 win over the Miami Heat last night, the latest in their conquests. They are guaranteed a bona fide playoff spot in the West right now. Nick Angstadt from Locked On Mavericks joins me now. And Nick, let's start. Let's start with the how did they get here? How did they go from like, hey, this is a cool thing happening in Dallas to like, wait a second, are they the second or third best team in the West?
At some point over the last calendar year, the basketball gods heard all the prayers of the MFFLs, the Dallas Mavericks fans out there, just to say, can you just get us a competent team? Get its team that can rebound, that can maybe hit some threes, but doesn't have to hit some threes. Can you just that can play any defense at all? And Nico Harrison has had like just a masterclass over the last basically calendar year, where you go from the draft, where yes, the Mavericks tanked 2 games to get a draft pick, and they kept the draft pick, and then they traded down in the draft pick, got Derek Lively, got Omax Prosper, got off of Rashawn Holmes' money. Then in free agency, Nico Harrison nails 2 minimum contracts with Derek Jones Jr. and Dante Exum, who have been awesome. Yeah. And then at the trade deadline, he nails 2 trades in PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford, all while still having obviously Luka Doncic, Kyrie Irving, and him working really well together. It's just become now like a full complete team. And when you put a full complete team around Luka, where, all right, we can defend and you just get us enough points to win games, they'll win games.
Yeah, and you know, we've seen Luka in a playoff series absolutely go nuclear and basically win games and series by himself. I think it's been an underrated story this season. Kyrie Irving is averaging almost 26 points a game. Like, he has been Kyrie Irving, and this team in a playoff series, when they go up against other teams in the postseason, they can credibly say we have the 2 best players on the court in any given game, or they're at least capable of having the 2 best players on the court in any given game.
Yeah, you can have the best player in the game, and it doesn't have to be Luka Doncic like that. Like, yeah. Jalen Brunson had just gotten to that point at the very end with the Mavericks, and they went to the Western Conference Finals when he was playing that well. And now you have Luka and Kyrie. They are 2 teammates averaging 25, 5, and 5, and the only teammates to ever do that, Harden and Westbrook on the Rockets. Kevin Durant and Steph Curry did it twice. Those are the only teammates to ever average 25, 5, and 5 together. Like, these 2 are just doing something on a completely different level. They are working together. They're gelling together. They're starting to do things where they'll pass to a spot where that player is not. Like, Kyrie will pass to a spot Luka isn't, and Luka will pass to a spot Kyrie isn't, because they know where the other one is going to go. Like, they're starting to mesh in that way. And that's how the Jokic and Jamal Murray combination has been so good. A bunch of combinations in the past. You get that basketball chemistry. There's just a difference. And we've seen some of these teams for so many years recently in the NBA. Let's just put a Kevin Durant and a Kyrie together and see what happens. And let's add a James Harden to it and see what happens, right? Like, it takes some time, but it takes some time on the court for those things to gel and to learn each other and learn their tendencies. And they're really starting to get there. And then they've got these pieces just kind of all fit around them.
They're more or less locked into this 4-5 matchup with the LA Clippers right now. And they've won 9 of their last 10 games. The Clippers also 7-3 in their last 10. So we've got some teams that are figuring this out here after remaking themselves over the last 18 months in each case. This is also a playoff series we've seen before. Why would it be any different this time?
Luka Doncic is not 21 years old anymore, and the Clippers guys are older, and they're more beaten up, and they have James Harden, and so it's a different team for sure. And it's not Rick Carlisle, it's Jason Kidd. And you go back to the last series the Mavs played against the Clippers. It was Luka Doncic. It was Porzingis, who was pouting over in the corner, averaging 13 points a game. It was Boban, started 3 games. Boban, Peter, started 3 games in that series and played like 30 minutes a game in that series. It was
Boban from John Wick, that Boban?
Willie Cauley-Stein and Trey Burke are getting minutes off the bench. This is a very different Mavericks team. Now, the Clippers are different, too, with James Harden. I don't know if you think that that's a positive thing or not, listening to James Harden in the playoffs, but Clippers have not played that well, like, in the last couple of months. They are on, 7 of 3, 7 of 10 in their last 10 or whatever, but
they don't look the same. They do not look like the team when they look like the best team in basketball for 3 months.
Their defense has been the 28th, defense in the NBA out of 30 in the last 2 or 3 months. So they're either coasting because they're a veteran team and they got to a spot and they're like, all right, we're not going to catch the top 3. We're just going to hang out here. Or this is what their defense is now. And I'm curious to see how it matches up.
Keep up with the Dallas Mavericks all year by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Mavericks on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Coming up, the Jaguars are incredibly desperate right now. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and their best price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. They're obsessed with finding ways to help you save money on tickets. Gametime has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event, and even an hour after it starts. It's the place to find last-minute seats. Find exclusive flash deals and sponsored deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. With zone deals, you pick the section, and Gametime picks the seats for big time savings. And the Gametime guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. For a limited time, all users can get $20 off any Major League Baseball purchase of $150 or more in the Gametime app with code FIRSTPITCH. Terms apply. That's code FIRST, PITCH, for $20 off until April 14th only. So you're running out of time. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, the lowest price guaranteed. The Jacksonville Jaguars have been stagnant this offseason. They lost Calvin Ridley to a division rival, and now they've signed pass rusher Josh Allen to a deal that our Locked On NFL hosts say makes him overpaid. As Tyler Rowland tells Alex Clancy, it's all out of desperation in Duval.
This move by Jacksonville, while you could argue Josh Allen deserves the money, you could argue that he is a good enough player to get this payday, I think it's a little bit of an overpay, and I think that the desperation of Jacksonville's offseason so far has really caused them to do this, losing out on Calvin Ridley and trying to play that dangerous game of not giving up the pick, but bringing him back. And that caused you to lose him. And now your number one wide receiver is Gabe Davis, who I think they overpaid for. I just think it's been a tough all season in Jacksonville, and they kind of needed something to right the ship. And I think this is like a perfume almost over the stink of Jacksonville's all season.
Let me make a prediction. Everyone's talking about the big trade up, the Julio Jones deal for the Buffalo Bills. Go up and get Malik Neighbors or Rome Odunze, or if quarterbacks go 1, 2, 3, 4, see if you can get up for Marvin Harrison Jr. That's logical. But for all the reasons laid out here and more, frankly, the Jaguars are desperate to make this work. They have Trevor Lawrence right now. Doug Peterson needs to win football games. Trent Baalke needs this team to start winning football games. And for our pal Tony Wiggins, host of Locked On Jags, I hope they can. And so what does desperation do? Causes you to do crazy things at times. I think the Jaguars are going to be a surprise team in this draft. I think they are going to move up. And I think they're going to try and get one of these top receivers, Rome Odunze, Malik Neighbors, someone to jumpstart this offense, a true running mate with Trevor Lawrence. And everyone's going to be going, whoa. And I'm going to be going, see? And finally, the NFL will feature a Friday night game in week 1. And it will be the Packers and the Eagles in Brazil. The game will be played in Sao Paulo on Friday, September 6th, one night after the traditional season opener involving the defending Super Bowl champions. It will be the first time since 1970 that the NFL has played a Friday night game in week 1, and it will be the first time in NFL history the NFL played a regular season game in South America. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all the shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Coming up on the next Locked On Sports Today, which team will make the most noise in the NFL draft? So at least until tomorrow, stay locked on sports today.
Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
For more episodes of Locked On Sports Today, go to our video on demand. Click on Sports at the top of your screen. There, you'll find past episodes of Locked On Sports Today, plus other Locked On shows on demand.